This week we're wrapping up Obscure Characters Month 2022 with a look at the history of the twin Autobot Wreckers, who are two bots in one. Rack and Ruin. Rack and Ruin were original characters created in 1986 by writer Simon Furman and artist Ron Smith for the Transformers comic published in the United Kingdom by Marvel. The unusual pair were essentially robotic conjoined twins, two identical bots joined at the shoulder. Which was Rack and which was Ruin was never said, but their one remaining right arm ended in an anvil and their left in a hammer. Debuting in issue number 82, they were members of the Autobot commando unit, the Wreckers, and regularly appeared as part of the team over the next 2 years' worth of stories. They didn't have much in the way of personality, beyond being rough and ready fighters like most of their teammates, but the unusual visual of the characters made them cult favourites with the comics audience, and many kids sent in letters wanting to know more about them. In response, a fact booklet included with issue number 200 explained that the pair had once been individual robots who had been surgically combined to save their lives. They had previously turned into Cybertronian mini-jets, but since being combined, they had lost the ability to transform. In the end, Rack and Ruin met their match when they went up against the time-travelling future Decepticon Galvatron, and were killed by a shot from his cannon. The very definition of an obscure favourite, Rack and Ruin wouldn't appear in any new Transformers media for over 2 decades, until 2010, when longtime Marvel UK fans Nick Roach and James Roberts incorporated the characters into the comic books they wrote for IDW Publishing. IDW's Rack and Ruin only appeared in flashback stories, as in this universe, the pair had died sometime before the present day. These stories established that Rack was the one with the anvil, revealed what the pair's faces looked like beneath their featureless domed helmets, distinguishing them by giving Ruin some facial damage, and gave them a new, expanded backstory, explaining that they were originally Decepticons, who lost their ability to transform long before being linked together due to overworking their transformation cogs. They were captured by the Autobots after a failed mission, and placed in the custody of Orion Pax, the young Optimus Prime, to be returned to the Decepticons in exchange for the release of the captured Autobot medical officer, Ratchet. Rack and Ruin begged Pax not to hand them over as they knew they'd be killed for their failure. When the exchange went sour and ended up in a firefight, Rack and Ruin helped the Autobots get safely away, and went on to join up with the faction, eventually becoming Wreckers, then being fused to one another. Now, IDW's Rack and Ruin were actually 2 of a set of triplets, 3 brothers whose sparks were all metaphysically connected to one another. Such spark-bonded siblings couldn't survive without each other. If one died, the others would too. And Rack and Ruin's third brother had died long ago, implying that the extinguishing of his spark had left Rack and Ruin slowly dying too, and that similar to the Marvel series, the pair were surgically merged as a way to extend their lives, though it was never said if it was their failing sparks that eventually killed them, or if they met their end in battle. Following this big reintroduction, Rack and Ruin went on to appear among the Wreckers in several new pieces of media over the years that followed, including 2013's Regeneration 1, an alternate continuation of the Marvel series that ignored their deaths at Galvatron's hands, the Transformers Legends mobile game, and they had a notable role in the 2014 novel Retribution, which introduced the pair into the world of Transformers Prime and gave them a new origin as Autobot prisoners of war who had been fused together in an experiment carried out by the Decepticon mad scientist Shockwave. They specifically joined the Wreckers for a shot at revenge against Shockwave and personally destroyed his tower headquarters. In 2018, Rack and Ruin made their momentous first appearance in animation in the Transformers Cyberverse cartoon. Somewhat different to past versions of the characters, Cyberverse Rack and Ruin had never been two individual bots. Rather, they had been born in their conjoined state, two torsos atop a single set of legs. Their heads were based on the characters' unmasked appearances from IDW's comics, and while they had normal arms, they did wield huge hammers as weapons. Depicted not as wreckers, but simply as part of the crew of the Autobot starship the Ark, they were good-hearted but dim-witted guys who were largely minor comedy characters. They appeared mainly as part of a running gag in which they attempted to stack crates, only to have their hard work ruined by other Transformers. Once, when the Ark travelled outside of space and time and encountered a series of duplicates of itself from parallel dimensions, the big punchline of the scene was that one version of the ship was captained by the dopey duo. The pair eventually enjoyed a dedicated showcase episode of their own, Season 3's Rack and Ruin and Ratchet, in which they were stacking crates aboard a shuttle when Ratchet took the craft out on a mission, unintentionally bringing Rack and Ruin along with him, who then had to rescue Ratchet after he was captured by the Decepticons. Season 4 even featured an evil counterpart to Rack and Ruin, the two-headed mercenary, Double Crosser, whose two halves, unlike the buddy-buddy Rack and Ruin, were constantly arguing with one another. The first ever toy of Rack and Ruin was released in the Cyberverse toy line in 2020. Just as in the comics, the characters were never seen to transform in the cartoon, but the figure converted into an armoured car, and featured flip-out Energon armour styled after the twins' domed helmets from the Marvel comic. In the time since Cyberverse Rack and Ruin's introduction, IDW have rebooted their comic books, and just this month, in the Wreckers miniseries, Tread and Circuits, which reintroduces the team into this new rebooted universe, Rack and Ruin appear among a list of potential new members for the group, based on the Cyberverse version of the characters. Harkening back to the past while opening up a new future for a peculiar pair of once obscure bots, Rack and Ruin prove that two heads really are better than one. And those are the basics on Rack and Ruin, one last cult favourite weirdo to bring Obscure Characters Month to an end. If you've enjoyed this series of looks into the dark corners of Transformers history and lore, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you can, help the series continue by supporting it on Patreon.